everyone. Welcome. I sent an email out and quoted this author, Abhijit Naskar. I'll just read the quote again because it really is relevant to what we're going to be discussing tonight, which is our sense of time as perceived through our bodies. So the quote is, "Time is basically an illusion created by the mind to aid in our sense of temporal presence in the vast ocean of space. Without the neurons to create a virtual perception of the past and the future based on all of our experiences, there is no actual existence of the past and the future. All that there is the present." So I did think that was quite relevant for our talk tonight. And as I mentioned, when we talked about intellectual time last week, we were going to talk about biological time this week. And the idea is, I thought it'd be fun to explore how our brain perceives time, as well as the understanding of the concept of now, which we talk a lot about in our mindfulness classes. So to begin with, we'll look at the research around the science of the body, because it plays such an important role in our health and well-being. And also, I'll show how the idea of the body clock plays an important role in athletes, their ability to perform superhuman feats, such as being able to hit a ball coming at them at 250 kilometers an hour. It's not really only about their skill, it's about their ability to tell time and predict the future. So I recently read a book by a UCLA neuroscience professor named Dean Buonomano, and the book is called "The Brain is a Time Machine." And in it, he states that the body has many, many clocks. In fact, it can tell time across 12 orders of magnitude, from hundreds of milliseconds to minutes, days, years, and millennia, which just validates the fact that the brain actually has many, many clocks. And one of the biological clocks that is almost imperceptible to us, but really operates like a real world clock in terms of its features of oscillation going back and forth. It operates on a feedback loop between hormones and neurons, and it really allows this homeostatic state, this perfect balance for us. When this clock is working perfectly, we are aligned with the movements of the earth and the diurnal and nocturnal movements. And so what happens is, in the morning, our body clock sends out alerting impulses to keep us awake and suppresses any sleep impulses. And then as day moves to night, that same clock in our bodies and our brains actually suppresses the alerting impulses and sends out dopamine, which helps us to sleep. And so these things, when they work very well, we feel very healthy and quite alive, right? I mean, we're not sleepy all day and we're not awake all night. But the thing is this, that our bodies are different from real world clocks, because real world clocks rely on either atomic energy or quartz, which is a very, very reliable oscillation. It's very steady and static, and so it's dependable. But our body clocks are not always that dependable, and so we can end up being out of sync with things, and we can end up with insomnia or hypersomnia, where we end up sleeping all the time. So it's not quite as reliable. But when it does work well, and when it's aligned with the planets and the earth, then we are feeling wonderful. But there's another way that we align ourselves biologically with time, and it's also critical to our existence. And that is how we perceive time through our senses. But it's quite complex. Information such as speech is processed through a system of neural dynamics. And although to us, thought and perception seem to take no time at all, that's actually incorrect. The brain perceives different types of information, sound, touch, vision, at different speeds using different neural architecture. And neuroscientists have found that our brain actually waits a minimum of 80 milliseconds to perceive all relevant information and put it together, weave it together in a story that we call our experience, or what we call now. And so it's actually, the name for it is called integration, because we integrate all this disparate information. And in an amazing feat of perception, the brain actually understands this gap It understands this delay and compensates for it by filling in the gaps of information. And that's how we weave time into this seamless and fluid experience when it is actually not. So a perfect example of this is when we watch a movie. So it's projected at precisely 24 frames per second, and any other speed wouldn't work. It appears to us as a unified whole because the brain fills in the gaps, and so we don't perceive it as these discrete and separate frames. In essence, the brain is stitching in the missing information between the frames by making its best guess in order to create that unified experience. And this ability to project information that doesn't actually exist is exactly what allows athletes to achieve almost superhuman feats. And it's how we also project our own lives into the future. So I'll tell you a story about a very well-known tennis player named Andy Roddick, who was quite successful in the early 2000s. And what he was known for was the ability to hit a ball across the court at 250 kilometers an hour, which is really, really fast, making it really difficult for the person on the receiving end to be able to hit that ball back. And so what happens is, at 250 kilometers an hour, it takes roughly a third of a second for the ball to get from one side of the court to the other. And in that time, your brain actually needs to process that information, so that a conservative estimate, scientists say, is that it takes a tenth of a second for the person having that ball coming at them to perceive where that ball is in time. So the receiver sees the ball in a particular location, but it's actually a tenth of a second behind where it is. And what they've shown is, in that tenth of a second, the ball has continued to move, and in fact has moved 7 meters. So the person who's going to hit that ball back is actually seeing the ball 7 meters behind where it really is. And in effect, he's seeing the past. So how does the brain interact with the ball at 7 meters behind where it is? The answer is the same thing as with a movie. It predicts the future. It stitches together the missing information. The brain is a prediction machine, just as we saw in that talk from Lisa Feldman Barrett. The brain predicts the future. And it's known that it compensates for these delays. It understands this gap in the perception and compensates for it. So that's a really sophisticated adaptation. So anyway, besides just the mystery and science and just fantastical knowledge that all of this is about, the point of these talks is that the brain is really a fantastic, amazing machine. And we can optimize our well-being and health by knowing that we can align ourselves with time and make that machine work for us. We can design our time. We can own our time and make the best use of it. I love this quote from an author named Harvey Mackay, and he says, "Time is free, but it's priceless. You can't own it, but you can use it. You can't keep it, but you can spend it. And once you've lost it, you can't get it back." So if we understand, as Professor Buonomano says, that our brain is a time machine, can we ensure we use our time wisely, spend it wisely, and not waste it? One way I try and make the best use of time is to slow time down. We did that in one of the earlier classes where we ate these grapes mindfully. We perceived all of its qualities. We perceived the touch, the taste, the sense. We thought about where it came from. We got this grander appreciation for this small little object because we took the time to appreciate it. Another way I mentioned in the last class is when I watched the Netflix show Chef's Table, and I decided that I could slow down the process of making my breakfast in order to not only enjoy it more, but really understand every movement and the grace and the joy of the time that it takes to do these things. And in so doing, it seemed like it took a lot longer, but it actually didn't. I took so much care with each step. It took less time because I wasn't dropping things, I wasn't banging into things, I wasn't cutting things incorrectly. So you can find that there's an optimization to slowing things down that makes time so much more amazing, so much more beautiful. And it can be your friend as opposed to your enemy. I do hear people still, even though we have so much more time today, talk about they don't have time for things, as if time was their enemy. And the point of slowing things down is to make time your friend. I know in yoga, we have to slow things down all the time. Because if you go through the poses too quickly, you lose the benefit. And we have to find the stillness and calmness, sometimes for what seems like an impossibly long time in these uncomfortable poses. And in doing so, create this sense of calm and peace and wonder for just being able to do the moves. So there's a real benefit to slowing time down and appreciating each moment. And so I was thinking for next week, you guys could pick a task or a series of tasks that should be taking like 5, 10, 15 minutes, not just brushing your teeth, and do it mindfully and do it slowly, appreciating each movement, appreciating, let's say if you're washing the dishes, you know, you finish the dishes, finished your meal, pick up the dishes, you pile them in the sink, then you wash them slowly and carefully, appreciating where the water is coming from and how clean they're going to be that you can use them the next time, and then you dry them very carefully and making sure there's no dirt on them, and then putting them away quietly and carefully, you don't break anything. If we can do that sequence of tasks, do it mindfully and do it slowly, I think you'll begin to understand the value of taking that time. So as I practice designing my time, it has led me to relish in it and soak in it. Even now when I have so much more time, I mean, I'm not working, and so I have a lot of time, and I could be sitting around going, what am I going to do with my time? But I've been able to enrich each moment by being aware of it, by taking it mindfully and knowing it's a gift. I might not get this time back. So I'm thinking if you do these tasks, you might gain a new appreciation for each minute, each hour, each day. There's a wonderful quote from an author named Annie Dillard who says, how we spend our days, of course, is how we spend our lives. So just knowing that this time is important, this now, this moment, and the wondrous ability of our brains to predict and fill in the gaps and adapt to our own perceptions so that we can own our time, design our time, and use it wisely. So thank you so much. In next class, we're going to be talking about our emotional time, because we know time is subjective. And depending on how we feel, it can be expansive or contracted. So we'll take a look at that in the next one. Thank you so much.